Welcome to Virtually Amazing Assistants, the podcast for assistants everywhere. If you've not met me before, my name is Shelley Fishel. I'm known as the MS Office Maestro, and I've been training assistants, business owners, organizations for over 25 years on Microsoft Office applications, and I still do that. However, I have a passion for assistants. I think you're all amazing. Businesses wouldn't work without you. And so I've created this podcast for assistants everywhere. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to be chatting each week with a different guest expert. We'll find out how they got to where they are, what they're up to now, and how they can help you. Tips and tricks abundant. We will learn loads. So that's me, Shelley Fishel. Enough of this introduction. In a moment, I'll be bringing on my guest. Welcome to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing Assistants, the podcast for assistants anywhere, everywhere, anywhere, everywhere. That's what it's supposed to say. Sorry, it's number 8 this week, so I'm getting a bit tongue twisted, but that's okay. So welcome again, and I'm delighted to have as my guest this week, Holly Copsey. And I'm even more delighted because we've had so many online interactions, but we've never met in person until just before we came online. And it's such a pleasure to meet you properly, Holly. It's really lovely. So the structure that we're going to follow as usual is I'm going to introduce Holly and then we'll see where it goes from there. So I better get stuck in. So Holly is the founder of the award-winning VA agency, Virtually Priceless, and also the Visionary VA Circle mentoring community. That's right, mentoring community. The visionary, I can't say this, visionary is like assistants. I can't spell assistants. Do you ever get that you decide on a name for something and you can't spell it? The Visionary VA Circle membership was founded in 2024, so earlier this year, and has already grown to a community of over 200 members. And I think that is awesome because I know how much work goes in to building a community. So kudos to you. Holly also hosts the Visionary VA podcast, which I highly recommend. So if you're looking for another podcast for VAs to listen to, head over and subscribe to that one. It's very informative. And I'm going to find out a bit more about that as we go on. Holly and I first met, as I said, online. We've both interacted via probably Amanda Johnson's group and LinkedIn possibly a little bit. And Joe Brianti, who was my first guest on the past and co-host of the VA podcast, suggested that Holly comes on as a guest. So welcome, Holly, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure. And thank you to Jo for ringing me. She's due to come on my podcast hopefully in the new year. So yeah,
okay.
Love Jo.
Excellent. Yes. I've known Jo, actually, Jo, when I first started Tomorrow's VA. So I had a face-to-face training company going into organizations delivering Microsoft applications training to groups. And I sold that and took the business online back in about 2017, I think it was 16, 17. And with my first iteration of my online program, I did a freebie. So I did a free draw. One person was going to win full access for a year and Jo won it. So we had a 1-to-1 and she got access to whatever I had available at the time. So that's how long I've known Jo, and we've become firm friends since then. It's
amazing.
Really lovely. Yeah. So I had a listen to one of your episodes, Holly, and was fascinated by something that you alluded to, and that was how you ended up as a VA. So if you're happy to share your kind of journey, because our listeners love to hear about the people, and then we'll talk business afterwards.
Yeah.
So how did you end up as a VA?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. So oh gosh, I don't know how far back you want me to go. I've always wanted to run my own business ever since I was very young. I just had no idea doing what. I did a Pitman secretarial course when I was a bit lost after leaving college and just ended up going into a bit of temping work. And then I got a job in a local school as a head teacher's PA, which I absolutely loved. I always loved organising people. And then I moved to another school. And then off the back of that, I got an opportunity to go for a role in London. My personal life changed a lot. I had always worked locally because another big part of my life is horses. So I wanted to stay local so I could fit that around my work. But life changed and I lost my horses and it was just a different phase. So I was really ready to go and give the London thing a try. So I actually ended up working in the chairman's office of Lloyd's Banking Group. And it was a very exciting time in the business because it was just as the Lloyd's and Halifax merger was going through. So I supported the chairman there. I was only there for about a year and then he retired and I moved to Barclays. And there I got a role working for the CEO of Barclaycard. And I had an amazing 10 years at Barclays. I absolutely loved it. I had a fantastic boss. It's that kind of golden era of time that we were there, and the business absolutely thrived. It was just a really exciting place to be. But while I was there, I was in that next phase of life, and I actually ended up having my first child, my daughter. And I went back to work full time when she was 6 months old. And that was hugely stressful because as an EA working at that level, your life has to fit around your boss. And suddenly I had my life needing to fit around my daughter. So although I'd gone back to work and they were quite flexible and it worked as well as it could do, I just knew that something had to change. So I set myself that goal of changing things by the time that she started school, which was going to be 4 years because she's only a summer baby, young one. Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I did a lot of research online about different opportunities. And I always thought I was going to have to retrain and do something different and give up the banking salary and all that sort of thing. So it really was a case of calculating how and when I could do it. And I just stumbled across the idea of being a VA really. And when I discovered it, I was like, that's it. I can do the thing I've always done. I've got the experience and I don't necessarily have to take a huge salary drop and do something completely different and go back to school effectively. So that was a real light bulb moment for me. And then from that moment on, I really focused on thinking about how I'd make that work. And as I say, I had that goal of her going to school. But actually, the situation came forward a bit sooner because a couple of years later, my then boss announced that he was retiring and an opportunity came up for redundancy. I'd also just found out I was pregnant with my second child. So I decided at that point it was a good time to step down and that I'd have a bit of a buffer of having some redundancy pay so I could set up my business. So I knew I wanted to do that after I'd had my baby. And again, it all happened a little bit sooner because I had a change of personal circumstances while I was pregnant and I actually separated from my then husband. So when I had my son, I had to do things a bit sooner and I actually launched the business when he was 9 months old. So it was a bit of a roller coaster, but it was just, yeah, it was great to be in that position to set up by myself and give my family the best possible situation. And yeah, I managed to launch just before my daughter started school. So achieved that goal.
Oh, that's amazing. It's really, really great to achieve, to set goals and then to see them come to fruition. And amazing that you managed to weather all of that and stay cheerful as well, because I imagine it was quite stressful. First losing your horses and moving to London. Oh, so many different things. So hats off to you. Hats off to you. So you started out virtually price. Was it always called virtually priceless from the
Yes.
beginning?
Yeah.
Brilliant. What a brilliant name. So you started out virtually priceless as just you. How soon was it before you started to realize that you A, wanted to grow and B, needed to grow? Because I think they're two separate things. And I think
Mhm.
many VAs are quite happy being VAs and not being bigger than a big organization. Whereas I sense that you've got a real entrepreneurial business streak to you and you really wanted to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason I chose the company name rather than using my own name, which I know a lot of VAs do when they start out. I always knew that I wanted it to be bigger than me. And actually, I landed on the company name, but I went through some old PD reports, personal development reports from work. And I kept seeing this word pop up that was invaluable. And I used the thesaurus as you do, and I came up with priceless. And that's how Virtually Priceless was born. But yeah, I always knew that. I've actually just done a recent episode on the podcast about planning, and I talk about the fact I've got a sort of journal from before I launched my business, which maps out roughly what I wanted to do. And I've actually hit all of those steps. And even back then, before I launched the business, I already talked about wanting to have a team and that to be quite a big team. So it was absolutely intentional. I think I took on my first associate within the first year. COVID was a really big year for us. I think the business trebled that year. It was massive and the work really took off and we won some big roles. And I ended up changing my role in the business and stepping back because as the team has grown, that's meant my role in the business has really evolved. And I've had to change my day-to-day role quite a lot.
Yeah. So you're now the CEO. You're now the
Absolutely.
person who needs an EA.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you have like a chief operations officer, somebody that makes sure that your stuff gets done?
Yeah, so I have a few different roles in the business. I have a head of client services who we appointed just over a year ago. That has been an absolute game changer because as we took on more and more clients and team members, it just became so much to manage. And I knew I wasn't doing the best job I could. And I wanted to make sure our clients had a really slick service and that they had someone who was doing those regular check ins, that was always just on it and always there. So she's now got a great handle on that. And she's overhauled our client onboarding service. And we have regular surveys and things that go out. So it's been really great having that. I've also had my own VA for several years now. I'd like to say at least 3 years, possibly 4, but I've had internal help in the business. And the big part of that was around particularly the recruitment side, because as you bring on team members, that is also a huge amount of work. And I needed help with that whole process. And she actually now helps run that thing end to end. And I only have to step in for some of the interviews. That's been an absolute lifesaver. Yeah, we've had marketing support. We've also had someone doing the social media. I also have a video editor who helps out with my YouTube channel because I do a weekly video for that too. So yeah, we've definitely taken on more and more support as we've needed it. And that changes, right? We've made a few changes to that along the way, but absolutely when there's a need to get some help in, I'm all about the outsourcing and getting the experts in.
Absolutely. I love hearing that because that's what I'm like as well.
Mm.
If it's not in my wheel of genius or zone of genius,
Yeah.
then I try and outsource it if I can, because the person who has that zone of genius will do a much better job than I
Absolutely.
will.
Yeah. And I measure
And I,
everything in what it's going to cost me versus how much I could potentially earn or what I could do for the business in that time. And I think it's all about taking the advice we give to our clients, right? We're always telling them to think about using their time more strategically and not spending it on admin tasks. And I do try to regularly think about the things I shouldn't be doing. And I have a kind of not do list that I can gradually start outsourcing and moving over to people.
yeah, that's brilliant. It's like something that I've done today, which we were talking about before. I use a particular piece of software for the podcast. It's been around for a while, but it's only just got all of the features that I felt I needed. And I was using some of the free AI features, which were just about tidying it up and a bit of editing help and producing show notes, things that would have taken quite a lot of time before. And it's scarily accurate. I only have to do a few spelling connections. But actually, I went to edit one of the episodes I recorded this week and I couldn't use it because I'd used up all the freebies. So I bit the bullet and paid for it. And I thought, because it's going to save me so much
Yeah,
time. And I think
absolutely.
there's a danger, isn't there, as a small business owner, that you think I've got to shell out for a VA and it's going to cost me so much money. But we forget what that cost is giving you
Yeah.
and the time that it's freeing up for the business
Yeah.
to do stuff. And my VA Zita looks after my social media. She's not a social media manager. It's
Mhm.
just worked out that way that she's
Yeah.
so much better at it than I am. So she does all that for me and it's brilliant. And she does other things that I ask her to do. And if I had to do that, I'd be spending however many hours because I'm not as good at it. I'm not as good at
Absolutely.
the design, creating the images and all that kind of. She's brilliant at
Yeah.
that. So yeah, that's it. So you've got this big team. How much of your time is devoted to your team?
That I think has become more manageable. It definitely got to a point where it was pretty difficult to manage by myself. So again, I've got some team leaders in place where we've got larger teams that help with managing some of those groups of people we've got. And also my head of client services, she manages some of the team members involved with those clients as well. So that's made a huge difference. So I actually have a much smaller team of direct reports now. And obviously I do chat to the wider team too. We have regularly quarterly meetings. We also have socials. So I want to spend time with them and I'm absolutely available for any quick questions and stuff that they've got. But in terms of that regular meeting schedule, I have other people step in and help because otherwise I just can't do it all. It's definitely been the most challenging aspect of the team and the client base getting so big.
Yeah, especially when it happens fast.
Yeah.
Because if it's organic and gradual, then you adapt. But when it's sudden, you have to find ways to manage that. So really amazing. So what's the Visionary VA Circle? What was the catalyst for that? What made you set that up and who joins it? And what's
Yeah.
in it for
So
them?
Yeah, so that was something I've actually wanted to do for a while. And I think it comes from my experience of my business just growing so quickly. And to be honest, me being so overwhelmed and just feeling like I was making it up as I went along. It did all happen very fast. It was very, very quick growth. And at the time, I really struggled to find the right mentor and the right community. There's some amazing VA trainers and things out there. I did my initial training with Joe Monroe. I know Amanda Johnson very well, who's also fabulous. But it was just finding someone who was the right fit for me. And I really wanted someone who was in the thick of it and had built that style business, because I knew I wanted to go for the bigger business. I wanted that agency style.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find someone who had done that or was doing that already and also working with VAs. And I think the other point was around the community itself, that there's some amazing VA groups out there. And I'm a member of a lot of those Facebook groups, but they're also quite noisy and they are full of a lot of people just starting out on their journey or exploring the idea of becoming a virtual assistant. And given that I was so busy and so in the thick of it, I didn't really have time to deal with all of that. I just wanted somewhere I could go where it was the right people. It was my crowd. It was the kind of people that would get the problems I have. And some of the biggest challenges in my business have been around having a team, because people are great, but people bring problems. There's all sorts of things that go on with them in their lives and with the business and with clients. And that's what we've tried to create now, is somewhere that's a bit of a forum for people to come and talk about those kind of things and the challenges they have with growing their business, particularly if that's happening very quickly, which if you're a great VA and you want to go down that route, it can happen ever so fast. So that's what we've created. It's just a free Facebook group. I do limit the people that can come in. We ask some sort of entry questions. So we try to make sure we've got people in there who've been in business for at least a year and that they've got a minimum level of clients and that they're looking to grow their team in that way. Because there are other ways of growing your business, but that's specifically what we focus on in the group, is those that want to scale through building a team. So it's quite niche, but I actually really like that. And it means we don't need thousands of members. We just need the right members. And we have some really good conversations and people ask lots of sensible questions. And it's just a really great resource to have if you're in the thick of growing your business. And I think it can be quite a lonely place. You sometimes feel like the only one. And even if you've got an amazing team around you in your business, you can't talk to them about all of the problems that go on, particularly if it's about team members and the things that
Yes.
come
Yeah.
associated
You
with that.
can't talk to a Yeah, you can't talk to a team member about a problem with
Yeah.
that team member.
Yeah.
You just
Exactly.
can't. And
Exactly.
I'm a member of a trainer community called Trainer Talk, run by a marvelous lady called Sharon Gaskin, and it's just a place where a lot of freelance trainers like me can go for support in growing their training businesses, because we're
Mm.
all training, we're all business owners, we're all delivering training. And also, it's a place where you can go. I've had this course, I've delivered this course, and I've had 3 really difficult people on it. What should I have done better? What could I do better? That
Yeah.
kind of thing. And the usual prices questions come up about pricing. Am I too expensive? Should I charge more? Should I charge less? Or what could I add on to make it worthwhile? All
Yeah.
of those business style questions. And we can go and have a bit of a moan as well, because we all need a bit of a moan
Yeah,
and let off
absolutely.
steam
You need to build a
sometimes.
level of steam. And I think just hearing that other people are doing things can sometimes be so encouraging. I mean, we had a post a couple of weeks ago from someone saying, "Oh, I'm thinking about increasing my prices. This is probably too high. Is anybody else charging over £40 an hour?" And immediately you had 20 people jump on the thread. "I'm charging 45. I'm charging 50. I'm definitely charging that. I'm putting my prices up." And they just jumped and went, "Oh, wow, I can do that too." And I think you
Yeah.
sometimes just need to know it's okay and that other people are already doing it. And just to give you that bit of encouragement. And that's really what we're about. The VA industry is very collaborative. We all know that already. But yeah, I think you can still feel quite lonely. It's nice to be able to voice your concerns and have support from the right people who really do genuinely know what you're going through. And it's lovely for me to get to a point where I can help and give back a little. My life is less frantic now. There's challenges in different ways, but as I say, 3-4 years ago, I just felt like I was on a hamster wheel that was getting faster and faster. I was very close to burnout. I had, some real challenges around my own time management and it affecting my personal life. And yeah, I definitely realized that something had to change. And it's about taking control of your own destiny and making that happen.
Yeah.
And the only way to get off the hamster wheel is by getting off the hamster wheel and changing things up.
Yeah. I've got a question. I want to know, have you got your horses back, or some horses, or are horses
I
in your
have.
life?
Horses are very much in my life. Actually, my office I'm sat in at the moment is based at the stables. So my parents live on a farm. And earlier last year, I actually had an old tack room there converted into an office space. So I'm now based at the stables. So it means that I can pop out. I can actually see my horse in the field from outside my office window. And it does mean that in the middle of the day, I can go for a lunchtime ride, or I can pop out for a vet or farrier appointment. And I also now have a bit more time to actually be able to train him, and I'm back out competing and things. And my children ride too. Yeah, big part of my life now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I used to ride. I rode up until I was about 11,
Oh,
and I loved it. And I have a cousin. She had a pony, and she couldn't ride this pony in competitions anymore because she got too tall
mm,
for the pony. So I used to ride her pony in gymkhanas, and it was such fun.
oh,
But I haven't ridden for years, and I have a really bad back now, so I
yeah.
don't think I really ought to be getting on the back of a horse at the moment. But I think
Oh,
horses are amazing because they're so calming as well. You read about
absolutely.
equine therapies and all that, those kind of things, and
Yeah.
I think it's phenomenal to
Yeah.
have
It's
horses.
great. It's just
So
nice to have a passion outside of work. I am someone that very easily can get drawn into working all hours of the day and night. My children go and stay with their father every fortnight. So every other weekend, I don't have the children with me. And if I didn't have the horses, before I got the horses, actually, I used to pretty much spend all weekend working
yeah,
because I love it. I enjoy it so much, but it's not a very healthy way to live. So now my
no, it's
weekend is
not.
full of horses and I have no money because I spend it all on them. But it's great. I wouldn't
That's
change
okay.
it.
Absolutely. So, just as we start to wrap up now, so are there any tips, like 2 or 3 tips that you could share with your listeners, lessons that you've learned from this accelerated journey, or tips about for those who are maybe in a corporate environment like you were,
Mm.
in a situation where they're either made redundant or they're thinking about jumping ship? What can you share for that kind of very broad group?
Yeah, I would say if you've got that hankering to do something different and potentially take the leap, yeah, I would say go for it. I absolutely believe in just taking the leap, but you've got to work on your mindset. It's not just about just don't go out there and just do it. It's not easy and it's not for everyone. And I think you've really got to understand the pros and cons and how much of an emotional roller coaster it can be. So definitely figure out if you're the right person to do that. And yeah, I think taking control of your own destiny is a big thing for me. I really believe in that. I think the other thing that I would say is, yeah, you've got to do so much work on yourself. I think having a growth mindset and taking every opportunity you can to learn, whether that's by doing courses, following a VA trainer if you want to go down the path of becoming a VA, but just in life. Like I spend so much time listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and just reading books and just learning, because all of these things that you do, they just help build a different path for you. And it's been a massive thing for me. And I think the other thing is around resilience. I think that's something that I've developed a lot of over the years, that ability to brush things off, pick yourself up and get going again. So yeah, when things get tough, the ability to dig deep and realize most things aren't personal and actually life does still go on and you have to just keep going. And sometimes that's only putting one foot in front of the other, but sometimes that's all you can do and it's enough.
Yeah, I think that's very important, especially the point about it's not personal, because it in a service industry, which VA is obviously providing a service and a supportive service,
Yeah.
and trainers are also in teaching in that kind of supportive role. I know I take it very personally when somebody says, "Oh, that wasn't up to scratch," or "I didn't get as much out of that course," and I think I couldn't have done any more. Why didn't they get enough out of that course?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nothing to do with me. It's to
Yeah.
do with that they got up out of bed on the wrong side that day, or their husband told them they were leaving, or
Yeah.
they the bicycle crashed or
Yeah.
something on their way to the office. And so they are not in the right state of mind to deal with whatever it is that you're doing for them.
No, definitely.
So that once you can learn that not every
Yeah.
interaction is meant to
It
personally attack you,
absolutely, and it's hard,
it's
and it's not
important.
something you can just do overnight, but I try to keep that in mind now in all my interactions, whether it's with clients or with team members. just people you meet in everyday life, because nobody knows what's going on in somebody else's life. And we've all got challenges, and we all quite often respond to things in a way which, given another opportunity, we might not do. But yeah,
Exactly
learning to
right.
control your emotions and manage those behaviors, that's been a huge thing for me, especially as I've built a team and had to become a leader. I didn't have any experience of that. And it's something until you're doing it, you can't gain the experience. So big learning for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. You can read books about it and go on courses, but you actually got to get
Yeah.
out and do it.
Yeah.
So, Holly, this has been really fascinating. Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest.
Oh, thank you for having
And
me. It's been a real pleasure.
no, it's definitely my pleasure. And I can't remember when this episode is going to go out, but will definitely go out sometime. I think you're episode number 6. So it's somewhere in January it will be, because we launch on December the 17th. So by the time this goes out, this December the 17th will be a distant memory. Once
Very
again,
exciting.
thank you for coming. Thank you to all my listeners for listening to Virtually Amazing Assistants, the podcast for assistants everywhere. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. I'm going to see you next week with my next guest on the Virtually Amazing Assistants podcast. And that's me, Shelley Fishel, the MS Office Maestro, signing off for this week.